What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Got a new article I want to talk to you about today. It comes to you from Senior Matter, new website. I don't know much about these guys, but I saw this article. As a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, works with seniors and older adults, and works a boxing program. And I heard this on. Let's see, Huberman. What's Huberman's first name? Let me look him up really quick. He was on Joe Rogan, but he also has a great podcast himself. Andrew Huberman, I think is his name. They call him Hubie. He was talking about benefits of non-contact boxing. And it got me thinking about a couple of things in regards to working with older populations. Why non-contact boxing versus actual contact boxing? So I think we've got a good idea here. I mean, I think when I look at this and I go across, if you're just shadow boxing and just hitting mitts and such, like there's some bone density benefit, there's some muscular strength benefit, but I think you'd get more if you were hitting a moving target and hitting something that was a little bit more dense than just a bag or a box. Not to mention the flinch, my brother built that into me when I was growing up, like the constant, I'm gonna possibly get hit. He was always coming at me. I never knew, so it would help with their response time, and even like the body hardening component to getting a hit in the ribs and hit in the face a couple of times. I think it'd be good. I think it could help bone density. I tried my best to get through this and not have. I'm joking, by the way, everybody. So I actually had another professional asked me, hey, why would people do non-contact boxing? They're not going to get any response into their musculature or into their bone density. And I'm like, you understand by non-contact, it means that they're not getting hit back by someone else, not that they're not touching anything. Like you are punching a bag, because he even joked, he's like, why does the guy have gloves on if he's not gonna actually hit anything? Like, you don't need the gloves, bro. You're just gonna shadow box all the time. No, the whole point is, and what they were discussing is contact versus non-contact, meaning are you having someone throw kicks and punches and such back at you? No, that's not what I'm suggesting. I was teasing. But by non-contact boxing, it means that you're not boxing another person, but you are hitting a bag, hitting pads, hitting mitts, etc. I grew up in an environment. I did Taekwondo, I did Tang Sudo, I did a little bit of Judo, I did a little bit of Jiu-Jitsu growing up, but mostly Tang Sudo. And I did a lot of different sparring, a lot of different forms and techniques. And so you have 3 different levels of martial art or of boxing, of contact sport, if you will. Your first one is non-contact. It means you literally don't hit another person. You hit bags and mitts and that kind of stuff, but you're not hitting another person. Then you have like light sparring. They call it like touch or point, where you're just kind of like, hey, I got you. Hey, you're kind of working on hand-eye coordination and you're working your skills, but you're not trying to take the guy's head off. And then there's full contact, okay? I am not saying we take 2 of our older adult clients, put gloves on them and let them go at it. Here we go, Doris. Okay, no, I got 5 on Joyce. I would find it ridiculous. But Keegan and I were like, we should do a video where we're like really trying to sell contact, like Fight Club, older adult Fight Club. Anyhow, just teasing. Okay, here are the benefits. All right, let's talk about this. Number 1, I think I got into it. What is it? So we're talking about hand-eye coordination. You're learning neuromuscular movement patterns. Jab, jab, cross, jab, jab, uppercut, hook. Like you're learning different movement patterns. They have different numbers and you have different drills that you can do. And you could say like, I want a 1, 2, 3, a 1, 3, 5. Like you can use different patterns of calling for a different variation of a punch to be thrown, okay? And there's footwork to go with that. So you're working on coordination, balance, reaction time from that, but also neuromuscular patterning of when I jab, do I step with my left or do I pivot and cross with my right? Like there's different kind of versions of that and different coaching. Then you have a cardiovascular component to this because you are working your body. You are definitely drilling your body in a system in a way that is going to increase, your core temperature and work your musculature, and it's going to get you sweaty. You're going to get a response from it. And on top of all that, you are going to get some reaction from hitting a bag or hitting the mitts, and you'll get some density back through your body, some reverberation, some impact, which is all beneficial, okay? So working with, and he puts on here, neuroboxing is a core movement pattern skill. Where's the line where he says it's like, did I pass it already? There's a line where he's saying it's like a godsend. It's like the best thing. It'll come up in here as we go through. It's literally been one of the best things for Parkinson's clients and for clients with MS, like a lot of individuals that are seeing good benefit with resistance training, but boxing, neuroboxing, shadow boxing, etc., non-contact, has been a big, like a missing piece. It's been a huge level up and elevation to the point where a lot of businesses, like one of our affiliates, Jen, she runs a boxing class. She calls her clients her fighters because they come in and they train, right? And that has taken that whole bit, that's her entire business model, is like she's working with individuals that have Alzheimer's, have Parkinson's, have MS, that have a neuromuscular, a cognitive, it addresses basically everything. And it gives them an opportunity, individuals an opportunity to train in some different movement patterns and get a lot accomplished in one. But it's this brain to body connection, the movement patterning, that's such a vital part to this. And the article kind of dives in a little bit deeper, and it talks about this, and gives you a little bit more perspective into it. And I think it's like the best course of medicine. This is one of the best things. They talk about how boxing, this wasn't something in the last 10 years. It was basically just like a version of mixed martial arts or of sport that people did. But as they continued to try to hey, we've got some older clients and people that used to box, they still have some pretty good movement skills, started to draw some correlations across the board. And they're like, I think everybody could do this. And it's fun, man. I do enjoy it. And there's definitely, it's not just throwing punches. You do have to learn how to do things right. There's a correct way to do anything and everything, from throwing a punch and hitting a mitt that kind of gives and you can screw up and not hurt yourself, to hitting a heavy bag where if you do hit it, if you hit it wrong, it hurts, right? Even if you hit it right, it still can hurt a little bit. And there's different levels of intensity of bags and how heavy they are, how soft they are. You could do speed bags like you see Rocky, right? And a lot of that. I mean, there's some very cool things you can do with this. And of course, there's more to it, that if you were literally going to train like this, there's jump roping with our older pops. There's actual jumping, then there's just cycling the rope. They have ones that there's no rope, but there's a little weighted ball on a handle, and you turn it still, and you can still move your feet in pattern like you're jumping, but there's no screw up, there's no trip, there's no, hey, I messed up, I need to start over. You still get the kind of feel of it. And a lot of clients, they won't even leave the ground. They'll just bob on their toes and just work their calves and their reflex in how fast can I ground react and move my feet up and down, but not actually leave the ground. So there's pretty good value in all this. And some of the old school kind of styles also included medicine ball training, and you're throwing stuff and slamming stuff, and of course Rocky's, cleaning and pressing log wagons, and doing sit-ups from the ceiling, all that kind of cool shit. But that's neither here nor there. I'm taking it again in a goofy direction, but just having fun with this is a form of fitness and a way of training that not only is different and it's unique and it's really fun, but it's got great benefit. And so it's a cool thing, I think, that a lot of people can incorporate. So I have 2 daughters. They love Rocky, okay? They love Rocky. And I got them gloves, I have mitts, I've taught, before I was like, let's just hit. And they just flail in and wail in and doing stuff. And then once we kind of go through and I start teaching them how to kind of line things up and how to, correctly jab and how to hit, how to cross and how to uppercut, they really started putting it together. But you could see the wheels turning, the full process for them to go through. And I'm not saying that older adults are like kids, but what I am saying is that on the curve of how the body develops and learns skill, okay, from zero, us not being able to move our giant heads, to eventually stabilizing our head, to crawling, to walking, etc. We learn the skill, it comes up, we get really good at it, we kind of peak it, and then it starts to decline. And eventually we get to a point at the other end of this where we can't do any of the skills that we used to, or at least it's diminished, okay? My goal is not to have you get to the point where you can't do anything. Remember, I want you 102, you're shadow boxing, you just skydive and you climb the mountain and then you die, right? You just drop dead happy because you're like, my body is just done, right? But I'm not like withering away and laying in a bed for the last 8 years of my life. You're not dead, but you're not living, bro, right? You're just not dying. And so I want you to live the best potential ever and then just drop dead. That's the plan. That's my plan. I want to go out, blaze of glory, having a great time, like doing whatever I'm doing. I'm on the trails, I'm hiking, I'm boxing, I'm doing whatever it is. And that's it. But high quality, high function, that's the plan. Now, will my performance at 30 be the same as it is as 80? No, of course not. But it could still be very high functioning. Now, my point is on that scale of kids learning to coordinate, move, react, respond, pattern, neuromuscular, all this, right? Cognitive process to think all that through, the cognitive process and the neuromuscular patterning to learn when he says one, that means jab, that means left front hand and step and pivot and rotate, right? Or whatever the process is. Learning all that is just as valuable at 8 as it is at 80. Like the benefit on both of those are exactly the same. If I went down that list and I'm like, here's the benefits for each of these, 8-year-old, 80-year-old, it would be identical. There's really nothing different there that I would look through and be like, oh, because you're 8, it actually does this. Because you're 80, it does. It's the same list. But it's a benefit for us at all abilities, at all levels as we go through this. It's only going to help in the long run, okay? And especially with something that it's like fitness resistance dancing, okay? Like if that's not a real thing, but if that was something where you were like, I'm gonna dance with someone who's not gonna wanna move all that much, so I'm gonna have to really manipulate them, but I'm also gonna get like fitness levels, I'm gonna elevate my body's ability to resist and to move. Like, if I'm gonna create a pattern though that I have to learn, like I can get this physical response, I can get a cardiovascular response, I can get a cognitive buy-in and a pattern that I have to learn and work through. That's why jiu-jitsu is so much fun. That's why boxing is so much fun. That's why karate, like all of these things, that's why they call it mixed martial arts, because it's a combo of all that, right? And I'm a big UFC fan, I'm a boxing fan. I love contact sports and in as safe of a way as you can do it, obviously. And the athleticism that goes into this is remarkable. I still stand by the idea that the greatest athletes I have seen are throwing athletes. And by that, I mean like track and field. You may say, oh, you're biased because you were one. And that is like a very arrogant pat on my own back, but I wasn't a very good one. I was okay, right? But let me put it to you this way. I don't need to go on forever on this, but I think you guys get my point, okay? If I were gonna pick an athlete who is pretty conditioned, pretty strong, pretty athletic, but not the best at all of those, I'd pick a thrower. I would pick a hammer thrower, a discus thrower, a shot putter, okay? They'll take 50 to 60 throws in a workout. So they've got some decent conditioning. They're extremely explosive and dynamic, okay? Some of the best on the earth. They're strong as shit. They're extremely flexible and agile. They move like ninjas. They're giant human beings and they move in a 7-foot or an 8-foot circle. And they create some of the most dynamic, explosive, like the most rageful and graceful actions at the same time. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go look at a video of someone throwing the hammer, someone throwing the discus. Look at Lance Deal throw the hammer and tell me it's not violent, but also beautiful at the same time. Like when you watch the rotation and the force and the rage that comes out of him at the end, but you're like, that was so graceful. Like you're constantly in a state of almost wiping out. Like you are constantly in a state of getting as much force and torque production as your body can possibly lean and counter and push against, and you're almost out of control. And at the last second, you traject it and let go of it in a perfect direction inside a 30-degree sector. And you maximize that distance while staying in this circle as violently and as gracefully as you can. It's like the perfect combo of everything, right? So you might look at like CrossFit athletes and be like, oh, they're great. I'd put them up against a thrower any day. The throwers are going to win the strength complexes. They're going to win the dynamic complexes. You'll probably outbeat them in the endurance stuff. But if I'm looking for like the best overall athlete, a throwing athlete's not a bad one to pick from. Okay? A thrower that did gymnastics is probably going to be like one of the best ones you'll find out there ever. And then a thrower that also did gymnastics who's a pretty good Olympic weightlifter, I mean, you've got some of the best athletes in the world, if not the best. So my point, got a little off base with the throwing thing, but my point is we are taking multiple skill sets and able to train them all in kind of one pattern. I can be explosive when I punch. I can let off a little bit and I can do a lot of repetitions and get a little more conditioning. And the whole time I've got this cognitive buy-in to learn these new patterns, to listen to my coach, to hear the cues, to work on my footwork, to put all of this together as I go through and create something that, if done well, can be exceptionally violent, but also graceful and smooth and beautiful, right? You watch Mike Tyson box and you're like, dude's violent, right? I mean, one of the most violent human beings in the world in terms of creating a massive amount of power with minimal windup and just crushing strength, right? But at the same time, if you watch it in slow motion, you're like, look how graceful this is. Look how smooth it is. Watch Sugar Ray, watch Roberto Durant. These guys were so smooth and clean and could just whap, 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 whap. Like it just flows. And that's why they call it the flow state. You watch boxers, UFC fighters, and they just start whap, 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 and they just can't miss. That's the flow state. They're no longer thinking about what they're trying to produce. It's just kind of coming natural. And that's a high level. That's like a dharmatic mindset of like, I'm in my space, I'm in my environment, I'm in such a good flow of this moment that I'm not even aware that I'm not focusing at such a high level. I'm probably rambling at this point, but you guys get my point. Is like, even doing this at a very basic level, the shadow boxing, the non-contact boxing, has great, great value. And if you just get better at it, it has even better return. So let's look at risks, right? Okay, let's look at the risks. Benefits, we talked about that. Improved, yep, we talked about that. Okay, what are the risks? So obviously I'm not getting hit back in the face. So we're not worried about contact impacts, any of that kind of stuff. It's basically like whatever you would suggest to someone starting any new fitness routine is like, don't overdo it, gradually build in. You could have muscle sprains and strains, listen to your body. It's that kind of thing. Like, modifications are acceptable whenever needed. Be vocal, tell your coach. All the same stuff I would tell you if you're like, hey, I'm going to start yoga for the first time. I'm going to start Tai Chi. I'm going to start resistance training. I'm going to start kettlebell training. I'm going to, whatever it is, you enter blank. I'm going to golf. I'm going to tennis. I'm going to hike. I'm going to ruck. I'm going to do whatever it is. We would give you the same speech. Don't overdo it. Start progressive, slow, listen to your body, right? Get good recovery. Good. Learn as much as you can about the sport. Make sure you're doing all the things right. Build up as you go. Next thing you know, you can do it daily. Reap the benefit, reap the reward. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's a great thing to incorporate into your programming. Something that, I have experience with, and I train my daughters, and I've done it myself, and I love it. And like, why wouldn't I do it in here more? And maybe that's something to explore. Maybe that's something, why wouldn't I do it more? Maybe that's something to explore. Now I'm rhyming. Now I'm fucking Dr. Seuss over here. Excuse me. I didn't mean to drop the F-bomb. My bad. Anyhow, I'm going to cut this before I get myself into real trouble. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I want to have a little bit of fun, but also to talk about this in a serious base. I think this is something that could level up your business, if not just make the experiences that you have with your clientele really, really fun and have a great return. And it's like, who doesn't like hitting stuff? Who doesn't want to feel better about learning how to actually defend yourself a little bit? And I know when we talk about this from kind of a fitness background, in the beginning, though joking, like I was always on the defense with my brother because he did constantly try to hit me. But I got very good at being alert and like being aware of someone who was trying to do harm to me. And so there is a little bit to this of like, yeah, you are going to learn how to handle yourself a little bit, but nothing compares to someone actually throwing back at you. And I'm not saying that's what we need to do with our clients, But it is something like if my girls, if they don't have their hands up, like I'll just throw a mitt over their head real quick and watch them, watch them learn how to cover. Hey, don't forget about this. Like someone might be throwing back at you someday. It is something that's pretty fun to train and to get into. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, again, not a boxing expert. I'm just a big fan. I do think this is something that we will start to incorporate and that we could incorporate as a industry. I know I'm probably a little bit late with this video. I know a lot of people are doing this already, but a lot of people, I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about this. I think this is something pretty cool that we could do in the future. I hope to see you do as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, trainingtheolderadult.com, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You guys know where we're at. We appreciate you. We love you as always. Hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Bye.